Bismillah. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As we continue the explanation by the great Imam Abu al-Abbas Taqiyuddin Ahmad ibn Abdul Halim ibn Abdul Salam Taymiyyah al-Harrani al-Dimashqi rahimahullah, died 728 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. The time now is 7:05 p.m. Wednesday, September the 7th, 2022, which agrees on the Islamic calendar, Tariq al-Hijri, was currently the 10th of the month of Safar, the year 1444, after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. We continue in the tremendous treatise by the great Imam Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah. Notice that we were discussing the statement of the great Imam that Shaykh al-Islam actually conveyed in his book by the great Imam Ibn al-Majishun rahimahullah. You'll find in that lengthy statement with so many benefits that's extracted from it. Well, Ibn al-Majishun, he goes on to mention what was the aqidah of what they were upon. Well, you know that the great Imam Ibn al-Majishun rahimahullah, whose name was Abdul Aziz Ibn Abdullah Ibn Abi Salama Ibn al-Majishun, and he was from the Aqran, who lived during the same time, and he was from the great A'immah in Al-Medina, and he lived during the time of Imam Malik. Rather, he was from the Aqran. He was from those who lived in the same time, and the same, if you want to say, call them the contemporaries of the great Imam Malik. They lived in the same area, they taught in the same masjid, and they were from Medina. And we know the great Imam Malik, rahimahullah, lived during the time of the Ahd Tabi'een. He lived during the time of Tabi'een, the time of those who follow, the followers of those who follow the Sahaba. You'll find, Ya Ma'ash al-Ikhwa, Ibn al-Majishun said in a very beneficial statement, and we said that it was very detailed, to the point where he spoke about what was the belief of those who were upon what was correct during that time. So you notice that Ibn al-Majishun rahimahullah, he lived at a time that was very close to the great first three generations who the Messenger of Allah praised, who were considered the Salaf, who were the Sahaba, and who came after the Sahaba, who were the Tabi'een, and those who came after the Tabi'een, who were called the Atba' Tabi'een, or if you want to call them Tabi'een. He was speaking about what was their belief. So you'll find that the proofs and evidences that great Imam Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, that he utilized to establish what was the correct belief of the Muslims in regards to these matters that we're discussing. Because we know during that time, when Ibn al-Majishun rahimahullah was alive, he also lived during the period of fitan, trials and tribulations. And we know the greatest of all trials and tribulations is the people being tested in their religion and in their belief, and especially in the affairs that's connected with Allah. Those are the worst of all trials and tribulations. As you'll know, they are worse than murder, worse than corruption within the earth. There's nothing worse than affairs where a person finds doubt within their belief, or their belief becomes affected, or their conviction in which they draw close to Allah, rather, which the Muslim will be questioned when they die, and with the first thing that will be addressed and be examined when they meet Allah on the day of resurrection. Those affairs are the most detrimental, and they're the most dangerous if one was to die in some type of doubt concerning it. So that's why you'll find that the great Imam Ibn al-Majishun was giving us what was their belief, because they lived during the time of the first generations of that they lived during the time of those who were considered the most virtuous of centuries. That was close to, like we said, to the tabi'een. Or to the tabi'een and those who came before. So what was their belief? So let's mention what was said. وقال المسلمون, Ibn al-Majishun goes on to say, إذا قالوا إنما جحد رؤية الله يوم القيامة إقامة للحجة الضالة المضلة. We already talked about that. Let's skip down. وقال المسلمون يا رسول الله هل نرى ربنا؟ فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم هل تضارون في رؤية الشمس ليس دونها السحاب. To the end of it. We already discussed this. So just read it. So the message of Allah, it was asked, as the Sahaba asked the message of Allah, O message of Allah, we will see our Lord on the day of resurrection. The message of Allah, as we know, brought in those narrations, saying, هَلْ تُضَارُّونَ فِي رُؤْيَةِ الشَّمْسِ. He says, will you not find any harm? When we talked about the word harm, meaning, there are three meanings that have came in the authentic sunnah. In this regard, how affairs would take place in regards to the people seeing Allah. There's been meanings that comes in the narrations, such as tadarrur, meaning you will not find any harm that will need where you will have to gather in a certain place in order for the vision to take place, meaning for you to see Allah on the day of resurrection. So what is negated in these narration? The meaning of darar, harm, meaning you will not have to gather where any of you have to climb one another or any of you have to harm one another in order to see Allah. Meaning that clarity that would take place. The clarity of the vision of the people. So keep in mind when we say vision of the people, because ru'ya, the word ru'ya meaning vision or something that's pertaining to sight, the affair is talking about the servants. The servants are the ones that will see Allah. The servants, and the ru'ya you'll find in which Ahl Ilm mentioned the word ru'ya. The word ru'ya was talking about the people seeing Allah on the day of resurrection. So it's not a characteristic of Allah. Ru'ya is not sifatul lillah. Ru'ya, the people seeing Allah on the day of resurrection. In these particular chapters, it's talking about the people seeing Allah. In these chapters you'll find it's talking about the people seeing Allah. The affairs you'll find in which the people are upon deviation, negate that Allah will be seen. However, the message of Allah gave the best of clarification. How the affair will be so clear to the point that he gave the example of the vision. And the message of Allah in these narrations is resembling here the vision of the people. Meaning your vision to how you see the sun and the moon, how you will see Allah in that clarity, meaning the same vision that you will have to see in that clarity in this dunya, which is the sun and the moon, resembling the same type of your vision that will take place, or the type of vision you will have in clarity on the day of resurrection when you see Allah. So the message of Allah was not resembling what is being seen. He's not resembling that. He's not resembling the sun with Allah or the moon with Allah. No. The message of Allah was resembling your vision in this dunya in clarity of how the clarity of your vision will be on the day of resurrection. So the resemblance here is what? Tashbih al-what? Al-ru'ya bil-ru'ya, not tashbih al-mar'i bil-mar'i. So the resemblance that the message of Allah is given is a resemblance of the vision of the people of how the resemblance of the vision where people will be on the day of resurrection. So your vision and how clear it will be, or how clear it is rather in this dunya, the clarity it will have when you see Allah is similar to the clarity of the vision of how you see the sun when there's no clouds in it, or the moon on the full night when there's nothing hindering your sight of the moon on that night. That same vision, meaning that clarity that you receive in this world, the message of Allah was resembling your vision, the vision of the people, of how it will be on the day of resurrection. So you'll find, we'll talk about that in a minute to add more clarity to this matter momentarily. We'll come in a minute. Right. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave and said the clarity of the affair. هل تضارون في رؤية الشمس. So, number one, there will not be any harm that will take place from the people when they see Allah. Number one, that's being negated. Number two, هل تضارون. هل تضامون. Meaning, لا تضامون. لا تضامون. We'll talk about that in a minute. The second thing that the Messenger of Allah negated in these narrations is no blame will take place. The word blame, Bad, Ya, Meen in the Arabic language means dhulm. Means dhulm. It means injustice. Or any type of what? Harm. But here, in this context, it means injustice. Meaning, no injustice will take place where anyone will have to, like we said, fall into anything of harm to the people, or you have to oppress anyone in order to see Allah. The Messenger of Allah is putting so much emphasis on the affair of how the clarity will be on the day of resurrection by giving all these meanings. Number one, you will not have to harm one another, meaning you will not have to climb over or hurt or push. Just as does anyone have to do that in this world when you see the sun and the moon? No. Number two, no injustice will take place. Number three, how many people that will be on the day of resurrection, meaning the crowd. This ziham. As we know that there will be a lot of people, will be in abundance, rather a great crowd of people on the day of resurrection, rather everyone that lived in this world will be on the day of resurrection. And the fact that huge or that abundant of numbers of nations, of people that lived in the time of old, all the way up to the last days, all the way up to when the final people lived on this earth, all of them will be on one plane. And there will be a crowd of people, rather the crowd will be what? Severe. And just the fair of it being crowded like that, the people will still see Allah. So even though there will be a crowd on the day of resurrection, the people will still see Allah together with the other, meaning the believers, or the people. And when we say the people, we mean the believers. As far as in regards to the hypocrites, or the kuffar, there is a little khilaf in that matter. This is not the time to explain it. But we know by agreement that the believers will see Allah, and it is agreement that the believers will see Allah in paradise. And we know that no one from the kuffar will see Allah together with Ta'ala. In regards to the people of paradise, only the believers. That is only specifically for them. The ru'ya of the believers in paradise is only for them. As far as on the day of resurrection, we know that the believers will see Allah, most definitely. In regards to the munafiqeen and the kuffar, there's a little khilaf in that particular matter. Some of them say that Allah will appear, and then He will what? Become hidden from them. And they will never see Him ever again. I have a khilaf between al-ilm in that regard. But what is considered the most important of affairs is that the believers will see Allah bil-ittifaq, in agreement. That on the day of resurrection, they will most definitely see Allah. Tabaraka wa ta'ala. And likewise in paradise, as we said. Right, just to sum up everything. So I have to hurry up. Just to sum up everything. Allah, the Prophet ﷺ in these narrations, which comes in Bukhari and Muslim, he's negating, number one, that the people will receive any harm on the day of resurrection when they look at Allah. Meaning the believers, of course. The second meaning that's negated is dhulm. Any type of injustice will take place, or blame. That's also negated. Number three, when we say dhulm, meaning the crowdedness of the people, which will be great on the day of resurrection. Like we said, keep in mind, there will be nations upon nations of people on the day of resurrection. People that lived during the time of old, people that lived during the time of the later generations, all will be upon one plane. So the crowdedness also will not be a hindrance. It will not hinder the people from seeing Allah with ta'ala, like we said, but we know that that vision is only for the believers, even though there's a difference of opinion in regards to the hypocrites and the kuffar. The number 3 meaning that the message of Allah negated is indimam, or what they call tadammun. Tadam meaning that the people will have to gather together to see Allah. That they will have to gather together. And they have to come together in order to see Allah. The emphasis that's being made here in this context, or contextually here, the message of Allah was trying to emphasize what, everyone? The clarity of the vision of the people. And like we said, in this context, we're talking about the believers, the people of Iman. We talked about the munafiqeen and the kuffar, something different. But we know without a shadow of a doubt that what? The believers, their clarity of their vision in this dunya, of how they just see the moon and the moon and the sun, with all of these affairs being negated. Just as you go out your house, you see the sun without any clouds in the sky. Nothing is a hindrance. Notice all these 3 things that the message of Allah negated for the day of resurrection is negated here too. Meaning in this world. When you go outside, you see the sun. Does anyone need to gather together to see it? No. Everyone comes out their house, they look up, and the people do not have to what? Have to gather together in order to see the sun. Do that? You come out your house, everyone sees it. They know it's the bright day, the bright sunny day. In addition to that, do the people now have to fight one another just to see the sun? Any type of harm? No. Number 3, due to the crowd that we know, people that live in our communities, even though the size of their number, some by the thousands, some by the millions, they still see it without any problem. So the message of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam here in this context is what, everyone? He's saying, and he's resembling what? What is he resembling? Allah with the sun and the moon? No. What is the message of Allah resembling here? That's what they call tashbih al-ru'ya bil-ru'ya. The message of Allah was resembling the ru'ya with another ru'ya. The message of Allah is resembling the vision of the people. He's resembling the vision of the believers with the vision of the believers on the day of resurrection. Pay close to what I'm saying. This is very important. If you don't understand this point, you're going to fall into some type of misunderstanding. The message of Allah, He's resembling the vision of the believers on the day of resurrection and the believers in this dunya. Let me start number 1. The vision of the believers in this dunya. And I notice I said the vision of the believers. The vision of the believers of the sun and the moon. The message of Allah is resembling the vision of the believers on the day of resurrection. So is it the resemblance here? Is it taking place between Allah and the creation? No. What resemblance is taking place here, everyone?
The vision.
The vision of who?
The believers.
Of the believers. Ahsan. That's it. So you understand perfectly. So the message of Allah in this hadith is resembling what? Vision of the people with a what? Vision of the people. Is it clear?
No.
The people of Bid'ah, what they're trying to do is say, no, the message of Allah, so you're trying to say He's resembling Allah with the creation? No. The message of Allah clearly was showing and putting emphasis of clarity where you'll find that He was directing and when He was addressing these hadiths who? The believers. Notice it says, Hal tudarun. How do you find any harm? Of the vision of the sun. When we look at the sun, where is that taking place from? Where is that emanated from? From us, from the people. The vision is taking place from us. So the message of Allah in this hadith is resembling the vision of the believers, of how they see the sun and the moon in this dunya, with the resemblance of the believers, or what? Of the clarity of how Allah will be seen on the day of resurrection. So, just to sum it up, it's called Tashbih al-Ru'ya bil-Ru'ya, laysa Tashbih al-Mar'i bil-Mar'i. Resemblance of a vision with another vision, not the resemblance of what is being seen with something else being seen. That's what's negated. Is it clear? Is he calling you a name or is he good? Oh, he is calling him. Sorry. Oh. الله أكبر الله أكبر اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة على محمد رسول الله. طيب. So we ask again, everyone, was the Messenger of Allah resembling Allah to creation in these narrations? So what was he resembling here? The vision of the people or vision of the believers. Saying your vision, O believers, with your vision of the sun and the moon. He's talking about the vision of us, of the believers. Inshallah, for what us? He's addressing us. We're addressing of course in the hadith, addressing the Sahaba. He says, just as your vision of clarity for the sun and the moon is in this dunya, is resembling how your vision will be in regards to the clarity of how Allah Ta'ala will be seen on the day of resurrection. So the resemblance is the vision of the believers with the vision of the believers twice. The vision in this dunya of the believers will be similar to what? The vision of who? Of the believers on the day of resurrection. So the ru'ya in these narrations is talking about what? Us. It's nothing to do with the characteristic of Allah Ta'ala in this particular context. It's not talking about that. It's talking about the act of how the believers will see, which that emanates from them themselves. Fine. So it goes on to say. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ talked about how the affair will be so clear, to the point where it says in the narration, he said, to the point, so much emphasis was put on the matter. He says, you see that the clouds are not hindering it. There's nothing blocking it. And that vision of the sun, on that day, it's clear. There's no clouds in the sky hindering you from seeing the sun or the moon. Similar to that, how the affair will be on the day of resurrection. Those three things that are negated, as we mentioned, is there will not be any injustice, there will not be any crowd that will hinder you, nor will there be any harm of the people due to their plentiful number that they will be on the day of resurrection, that will block you from how clear the affair will be when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala manifests himself to the believers. Even though we said the affair has some khilaf, a little bit of difference in regards to the kuffar and the hypocrites, but we know in agreement that the believers will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala twice. They will see them twice on the plains of the day of resurrection and in paradise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from them. As far as the affair of now, as we talked about, no one will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this dunya. No one can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this dunya. Due to the fact that we know for two reasons. One of them is that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it clearly in the narration of what comes in the Sahih Muslim. He said, فَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّكُمْ لَا يَرَى رَبَّكُمْ أَوْ لَا يَرَى أَحَدٌ رَبَّهُ حَتَّى يَمُوتُ. He said, no, that none of you will see your Lord until you die. None of you will see your Lord until you die. So listen to all these different types of insanity that you'll find within society. You'll find them say, God spoke to me, or I saw God last night. You didn't see Allah. Rather, it was from the whispers of the wasawis of the shayateen. But you'll find that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ made it clear in these narrations, none of you will see your Lord until you die. None of you will see your Lord until you die. A person might ask, so you saying Allah can't be seen in this dunya? We do not say out of respect for Allah, that we do not say Allah cannot be seen. Even in this dunya, we don't say that. But we do say, Allah Ta'ala will not manifest Himself in this dunya to none of the creation, except of what happened to have taken place with Musa alayhi salam, and the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam seen his Lord by the ru'yatul qalbiyya la bi ru'yatul basariyya. As it comes in the narration, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam seen his Lord by the vision of his heart, not by the vision of his sight, behind the hijab. Behind the hijab. From behind the hijab. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ in another narration to Aisha, he said to her, Nurun anna ara, hijabuhu nur. He said, light, how could I see her? So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ saw his Lord, but however, from behind the hijab, and the type of ru'yah that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ seen Allah with was by the ru'yatul qalbiyah, not by ru'yatul basariyah. It was by the vision of what? Of the heart, not by the vision of what? The sight. And the Messenger of Allah, he only seen his Lord Ta'ala from behind the hijab. Behind the hijab, and the veil of Allah is light. The veil of Allah Ta'ala is what? Is light. There's another narration as it comes in authentic narration where the Messenger of Allah said, وَحِجَابُهُ النُّورُ لَوْ كَشَفَهُ لَأَحْرَقَ سُبُحَاتُ وَجْهِهِ مَنْتَهَى إِلَيْهِ بَصْرُهُ مِنْ خَلْقِهِ. He said that the Messenger of Allah said that his veil is light. If he was to remove it, he said the subuhat wajhi. لَأَحْرَقَ سُبُحَاتُ وَجْهِهِ مَنْتَهَى إِلَيْهِ بَصْرُهُ مِنْ خَلْقِهِ. He said the glorification of your Lord will burn up everything in which his eyesight subhanahu wa ta'ala reaches, which is everything. So you'll find, ya ma'ashar ikhwan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his veil is light. The affair in which the Messenger of Allah had clarified in these hadith clearly expresses, it shows and it lays down there what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be seen on the day of resurrection for the believers. And we mentioned previously in other classes that it is a form of a test that will be made for them. And that will also expose those who are firm upon the true aqidah and the affair that's connected with Bab al-Asma' al-Sifat. The affair that's connected with the names and attributes of Allah will be tested. Those who denied and rejected that Allah had those certain attributes, or those perfect attributes, especially the affair of the shin, that the people who are upon deviation doubt or twist or they reject totally, that Allah does not have these attributes. Some of them say, of course, Allah will not be seen, which are the Mu'tazila, and based upon what we said about with the Ash'ari, which is another strange thing. They say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be seen, however it will not be without any muqabala, meaning not be in a certain direction or not be in a certain way or a certain manner where the actual vision will be taking place. Rather, it's not a true vision. Rather, they say it's something that's kind of rather it's metaphoric. Weird affairs upon more confusion and more weird affairs, which is absolute nonsense. That's what we talked about last class. We'll finish that fight. You'll find that it says, number one, we wanted to what? We almost finished that. Let's read the next part. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. But before we move on, I just want to make sure everyone understood properly. So the message of Allah in these narrations, he's resembling what, everyone? Number one, he's resembling the vision of who? Of the believers in this world, with how their vision will be what? On the day of resurrection. Ahsan. طيب. Also the vision of the believers is the message of Allah was also establishing that their ru'ya is a ru'yatun haqiqiyya. It's a true vision in which they will see Allah. And it's not metaphoric. It's not ru'yatun majaziyya. As you'll find that some of them, from those who are upon deviation, mention. They say it's not a true vision in which the believers will see Allah by. No. It's something metaphoric. There's no reality to it. It's something that's something else in which they'll see. It's not actually Allah Himself, rather something else they'll see. All those matters are what? Rejected. The message of Allah in these narrations puts so much emphasis in as far as in clarity of how the believers will see Allah, to the point where the affair of it being metaphoric is negated. Because there's so much emphasis of clarity that message of Allah put in these narrations. There's no way you can deny except that it will be Allah that will be seen. And all those different mu'akkidat, those emphasis that the message of Allah brought, negates, like we said, the affair of it being majaz, of it being what? Considered metaphoric. Fine, so let's continue what Ibn al-Majishun says. Then, so Ibn al-Majishun, who's from the Aqran of Imam Malik, he established that what? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be seen, and that was from his belief, that the believers will see Allah. So this was during the time of the Ahd al-Tabi'in, right everyone? So this was their belief. They believed that Allah will be seen. Then Ibn al-Majishun goes on to say, وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تمتلئ النار حتى يضع الجبار فيها قدمه فتقول قط قط فينزوي بعتها إلى بعض. So the message of Allah, also in the authentic narrative of Bukhari Muslim, this is from the belief of Ibn al-Majishun, that the Great Iman, Shaykh al-Islam, is also conveying. Another statement. Keep in mind, these statements are also in Sharh I'tiqad Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah by the Imam al-Laka'i, and also by the Great Imam Ibn Battah al-Ukbari. They put them in these very important books of Aqidah, which is called Al-Ibadatul Kubra wal-Sughra. And I think our brother Abu Hakim Bilal David just recently translated the first volume of it, which is a very important book in Aqidah. But you'll find that Ibn al-Majishun, that he says that the hellfire will not be filled until the Almighty, Allah, Al-Jabbar, will put His foot in it. And the hellfire will say, Qat, Qat. There's another narration that says, Qatti, Qatti, and there's another one that says, Qattin, Qattin. Qat, in Arabic, as we know, means a lot of different meanings, well, a couple of meanings, excuse me. One of them is hasbi, hasbi. That's enough, that's enough. Hasbi, hasbi. Here in this narration, the hellfire will say, that's enough, that's enough. What does that mean? When the message of Allah said that the hellfire will continue to eat, it will continue to what? Until there will be nothing but faragh. There will be empty. There will be more spaces for people to fall into. The only way it will become what? Full. Until Allah Ta'ala will what? Put His foot on the hellfire. He says, upon that, يَنْزَوِي بَعْتُهَا إِلَى بَعْض. Then it will start to what? Fold up and close. Until it will be what? Not be able to devour anyone else. Is it clear, everyone? Here in this instance, what's extracted from the hadith is what, everyone? Is that the message of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was clarifying in these narrations that Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala has the what? Has the characteristic what they call sifat al-qadam, the foot of Allah. The foot, not leg, foot. Some people you'll find that they translate the word qadam as rijl. Rijl is leg. That has not been what? affirmed, nor did it come any narration of that affair. The word qadam here means the foot of Allah Ta'ala. Is it clear, everyone? Qadam means foot. So the affair of the foot of Allah Ta'ala is a characteristic that we affirm. It is not like the foot of the creation, but at the same time, we do not what? Say that it means something else. We say it's a characteristic of Allah that is affirmed for Him, befits His majesty, and it does not resemble the foot of the creation. It does not resemble what? The qadam of the khalq. We will talk about that in a minute. So it says that the Messenger of Allah said that Allah will put His foot on the hellfire, so it can stop devouring the people, devouring and being destructive, in order to now be the punishment for those who are being cast into it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us away from that. Because we want to keep reading and we've almost finished. Alhamdulillah. وقال لثابت بن قيس لقد ضحك الله مما فعلت بضيفك البارحة. So Ibn Majishun, he goes on to mention another narration, which is also in Bukhari Muslim. It says that he said, the Messenger of Allah said to the great Sahabi, Thabit ibn Qais, he said, indeed Allah has laughed from what you had did with your guests last night. Indeed Allah has laughed. So the Messenger of Allah is affirming that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a characteristic of laughter. He has a characteristic of what? Dhahk. Ahl Sunnah, we affirm the characteristic, and we also affirm from the athar, or the athar of the characteristic. What do I mean by that? From what the characteristic, what it necessitates. The people of bid'ah, and I'm going to say this slowly so everyone can understand it. We affirm the characteristic, which is dhahk. We also affirm the other meanings that it necessitates. Of course, as far as what will be the effect. What does it mean? We believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala laughed without a doubt. And at the same time, it also what it implies, of course, what comes along with it, with the meaning, is that Allah is also merciful. And that He is what? That Allah Ta'ala rejoiced at that act. Bid'ah say no. They'll remove the characteristic and just leave the effect of it in certain regards, in certain contexts. No. We say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala laughed at the act in which the slave did. In this particular narration, what happened to Thabit ibn Qais, we'll talk about that next class. So when Allah laughed, it also at the same time what? Showed that Allah had mercy for him. And that Allah also was what? Rejoiced at what He did. So it was just not laughter, even though it's been affirmed, but also the effect of what? What came as a result of the laughter, which is to show mercy to the Sahabi, what he did, and that He also honored him. And He also what? Was rejoiced at what he did. So all those affairs are what? Are affirmed. The characteristic of laughter and the effect of what came with the laughter, which is Allah rejoicing at the act, and that Allah was pleased with the act, and that Allah showed mercy for that companion. So all those affairs are what? Affirmed. Even though the word laughter is a separate characteristic in itself. We affirm that characteristic of laughter, and also what came along with it, when Allah had laughed at that Sahabi, what he did of that tremendous noble act. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala laughed at that. Allah was, of course, at the same time, was pleased with it. He rejoiced at it. And He also showed mercy to the what? To the Sahabi. What did he do? Person would say, what did that Thabit ibn Qais, what did he do? Thabit ibn Qais, radiallahu anhu, what he did was, during the time of the night, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came as a guest. That Sahabi, Thabit ibn Qais, was a great Sahabi, did not have much. He said, he didn't have much. didn't have that much to serve, nor did he have much to give. Did he show it to the Messenger of Allah? No. The Messenger of Allah came in. He said, of course, we know what's binding upon a person when they have a guest is to be what? Honorable to their guest. But the best of all guests is who? The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When the Messenger of Allah came, they gave a little bit of food. They didn't show what they truly really had to the Messenger of Allah out of embarrassment. So they made some food along with what came with others. So when they fed the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they pretended as if they were eating, even though they didn't. They went to the back, they were acting as if they were also indulging in the food. And they didn't even give food to their children. And they had what? Preferred to give that food to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the affair of what? Preferring or give a preference to their guests over themselves. Whereas they were acting as if they what? They were not complaining, nor were they showing any type of what? Showing any type of harm, or showing any type of what? Displayment that they didn't have much to the Messenger of Allah, even though that truly was their reality. But they didn't show it. They hid it. So the Messenger of Allah thought that they were what? He thought that they had ate. Because that's what they were showing. Even though they didn't have anything. That's what happened. In summary. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored them by making the food enough for everybody. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored them, and then the Messenger of Allah gave the merit or the tremendous outcome, which is what? Allah laughed at what happened last night, which is you fed your guests, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala laughed at what you did, which came as a result of it also not only the laughter, that what? Allah honored them, Allah thanked them, Allah rejoiced at what they did, and Allah also what? Showed them mercy. By what? By forgiving them their sins to the end of it. So that is what happened at that what? At that particular time, when the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, indeed your Lord has laughed at what you did last night. Meaning that you were honorable to your guests despite of you having little to what? To give to them. Is it clear? So that's what happened. Us these days, what we've done, I don't have much to give, I don't have none. I don't have none. But this other narration will talk about the affair of laughter just tomorrow, inshallah. We'll stop here. Anything else, anyone? After me, we'll do. Anything else about the lesson? Just to leave off the last point though, notice that none of the Sahaba, when they heard these characteristics, did they say the way the Muslims say today? That my mind doesn't rationalize that. I don't believe that was laughter. Did they say that? No. Oh, no, that's not what's intended. What's intended is something else. All of them accepted it. They knew what it meant. They know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had that characteristic. They never tried to resemble it with the creation. They firmly believed it and knew that it was a laughter that befit His Majesty. And it didn't resemble the laughter of the creation, and that was it. They didn't now go to say, that laughter, that seemed like to me that's an emotional instinct. That's weakness. I don't believe that for Allah. You understand? We'll talk about that tomorrow and inshallah. We'll stop here. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك